They had some pipework on one side of the house. I said, we can either pack the wall out and box over the top of it, or I can keep it exposed and you can keep it like a feature, kind of like Mario. We had that conversation and I said, maybe we paint them green and get a piranha plant to come out of them.
All right, hey everyone, it's a new year. We got new shirts and we got big plans for 2023. Welcome to the Constructing Art Podcast. I'm Josh, and in today's podcast, we're going to be diving into a question that I know I get asked a lot when the customers call up, and I'm sure you get fielded the same question, Kenny, and that is, how much does cladding my house actually cost?
How much is it to I just need a ballpark. Could you just give me a quick price?
Yeah, it's never that simple though.
No, it really isn't. When people say, I won't hold you to it. I won't hold you to it. Like, all right, well, somewhere between 20 and 100 grand. That's being a bit silly. I mean, we can get close to like somewhere between 20 and 30. That's a fair one.
It all sort of depends on what the project is as well.
100%. So,
you want your whole house done? That could potentially cost you 100 grand. Depends on what product you've selected, how intricate it is.
What was that house up at Tambourine that we priced and you came back, that's going to be $77,000.
Oh, yeah.
What?
Yeah.
Well, you're working 10 metres in the air on scaffolding.
And we got to remove all of your red cedar.
Oh, red cedar. Anyone that had their house built in the 70s, early 80s with red cedar on it, I pity you because it's all coming off. We would get almost one a week of people saying, we want to reclad red cedar. Like, okay.
Yeah, so we thought we'd take a bit of a deep dive today, and we've chosen 5 of the projects we've done over the last year and a half. So we've got Plucks Road, Hillock, Thornside, Ballada Street, and Boona.
Beautiful.
And each one of those showcases a few different aspects of what it actually takes to get a wall cladding project. And there's most of them are reclads. However, we do have one new build in there.
There is a new build in there. Yeah, well, that Boona is definitely it's a new build. That's a very interesting, very private home.
Yes.
Very square, but we'll get to that when we get to that project number 5.
The end.
And I'm sure we'll mention some other projects in there which are simple. And I'll try and edit and chuck some videos in, some
photos,
overlays. Yeah, so you can see what we're talking about.
All right, so first cab off the rank, we've got Plucks Road, Linda's house.
Beautiful.
And it's a good intro as a feature wall using architectural cladding. It had perfect access, only had the one window. It was nice sort of easy sort of area. You come straight down the driveway, you see it, and for $13K for 44 squares, it's not bad.
Well, if you look at the price, if you go look at the dramatic effect and dramatic change it made to the house for street appeal, from quite a boring looking house. It was nice. It wasn't ugly, but it was quite boring and tired to the house on the street. So for $13K plus GST, it showcased what a cladding can do with if it's used as a feature.
Yeah. Very much.
So that was Stratco 265 in a monument mat.
Yes.
And one of the things that we did on that was that we changed their downpipe as well. We didn't actually allow for that.
No, we didn't. But the old downpipe that was there just didn't suit the new style of cladding that it was going over. No,
and it would have made it look really ugly, and it was stood out. So we put a new 100 by 75 downpipe because that's what was on there before. We put a new monument mat version of that and tied that in, and you didn't even notice it disappeared. And because it's square with the cladding, it just became part of it, and looked really good.
Yeah. So on this project, what's something that we learned as a business to sort of implement into projects going forward?
Well, if you look at how simple the job was, we learned that you can achieve really good results for a pretty good price. And the difference between this particular project to other projects is this one we went straight over the top of blue board. We knew it was blue board. It wasn't asbestos or anything like that. We didn't need to do any sarking. So essentially, from a waterproofing perspective, there was no real urgency to do any extra work to make it waterproof because it already was waterproof. So it's basically we're putting a skin over the top. So when doing a skin, things are a lot easier and a lot quicker. Another thing I learned is that if you can minimize on a project like this, we only needed to do one delivery.
Yeah.
So we had an external corner, and so we laid from the right to the left, installed all of our toe flashings, the feet flashing, bottom and top of window flashing, and then ordered in one order. We ordered the corner, the finishing flashings on the sides, and the sides of the window flashings. And so we were able to achieve the job in 4 days rather than it could have taken longer. Each time you order something, you essentially don't get that material. Now, you've got to get that material by 12 o'clock, so you don't get to have that material until maybe 12 o'clock the following day at best, depending on the workflow. So what we learned is on a simple job, if it's a lot easier to organize, and so that we can forecast the time frame to do the job a lot simpler, as well as the other thing we learned is that if we're going to do projects which have a really, really simple access, we can lower the labour rate and make it a bit more competitive.
Yeah. So now for number 2, we're going to look at the Hillock House. So that was a good full sort of 3 sides sort of reclad of a house in architectural over brick, and in between the brick, some of the brick walls there was some framing that we needed to pack out, and all that sort of stuff. So it cost around 18,000. However, that was one of the ones you
the quote was around 18.
Yeah, the quote. Yeah, sorry, the quote was around 18. It actually cost us a fair bit more than that.
Yeah, so that particular project, I went in there and I quoted it up based on... There was a lot of intricacies that for me to get across to Josh of what needed to be done was hard. Let's fast forward to the end here. What did we learn? One of the things is just give you all the information and let you price it properly. So it was difficult. So I went ahead and I quoted that all up in our same calculator. But what really blew out that project was the fact that access was quite terrible. We used our own scaffolding, and you had to finish everything as we had to move the scaffold multiple times. But the structure that we needed to pack out to be able to install our battens on, we needed to pack the walls out a lot.
Yeah.
And so if we were to do a project like that again, we would go and we would get a quote from a carpenter to come out and pack the walls out and frame them out, and then we could just work from battens outwards, from sarking to battens to our normal cladding, so that there wouldn't be all the extra unknowns, because you put experience where experience is meant to go, professionals where professionals. So experts is the word I was going for.
Yeah, we're just roofers, we're not framers.
Well, exactly. So although we can do it, we're not.
It's not something we do every day.
We're not proficient at it in the way that others are. So that one made it a bit. All those sorts of things made it challenging. The fact that, again, that was on the side of a really steep hill. The driveway was really steep. The access was pretty ordinary. And there was lots of different faces. So there was transitions to a soffit. There was a transition to a brick wall. There was a transition to a rendered wall. There was power boxes. There was a bunch of different things that we had to do to design on the go. And so it was really not straightforward at all. It looks like there's a wall, and there's corners. Though the execution of a job like that is a lot. If you compare it back to Plucks Road is like there's a wall and there's a wall, there's a window, there's a corner, cool, go. This one was like there's all these different things. All right, we'll start here, and then we'll go to there, then we'll go to there, and so forth. So there's a lot more design aspects. So when you've got a house like that, that where you're transitioning a wall from, say, timber framing down onto brickwork, the things that need to be taken into account is you've got a toe mould on there that is going to have a different length bottom on it, and it's got to receive up against the brick wall in a different way. Does it need to be anchored to the wall, or is it going to sit on there and just sit there nicely to the wall without any other fixings other than the ones above it? It's things like that which then go on a simple plain wall, you may have a 300 4-bend toe flashing. On this one, you may have a 800 7-bend flashing to make it all work and make it seamless. So that job had those sorts of things on it. So it's kind of, they're the things that made that job more complex. And that's similar to Ballada Street, which we'll talk about shortly as well. That they have this, you're having to transition from one to the other. And the Hillock was definitely one that each corner, each moment that you had to change a face, it was very challenging.
Yes. Yes. And it's one that we always sort of point out to people. If you want to look at how a standing seam wall looks, just drive past this one.
Yeah, well, it's in Cooperoo, so Hillock Street, Cooperoo. It's in a location where people can go and see it, and you can drive around it and see it. And it's kind of like how a late 60s, early 70s big brick home could look if you were to just cover it in standing seam. Because that was Nick's thing. He goes, I just want it covered. My dream is to have a whole house covered in standing seam monument mat. That's my lifelong goal. Yeah,
and it's a drastic change. It went from looking like just...
But...
Yeah, to just $1 million.
Yeah.
It changed the complete look of the house.
Yeah. So 100%, the house got the inside was completely transformed already. So it was, when you walked inside, it didn't reflect the outside of the house. It had brand new kitchen, had really nice designer furniture, and everything was beautiful. And then when you're outside the house, you're looking and it doesn't match. But once we did the cladding, the inside and the outside, they matched. It came across as someone's dream home.
Which is what we're all about. Yeah, so the next one we're going to cover is Thornside Road.
Yeah, it was a good job.
Which was a full Coro reclad.
Yep.
And this is to showcase the sort of difference between like pricing and complexity of a job that's using a more readily available profile.
Or more common.
Well, more common. Yeah. Sorry, more common. Yeah, that's more of a better way to put it. More common profile than the architecturals.
Yeah, so against the more high-end ones. However, it still made the house look high-end. See, the interesting thing with that is that everyone wants this high-end architectural look, though their house doesn't suit it. And we've talked about that in the Cladding podcast last season. So this one here, the Coro, what was it, the price on that one?
It was about 18, 19K to do that whole one.
And
it was 130 squares. So you look at the difference between this and Plucks Road, which was 13K for 44 squares plus GST. The significant increase, if you were to do that whole 130 in standing seam, it would have cost you an arm and a leg.
And the access to that one was not so flash either, so it would have gone. The labour would have gone up a bit as well. So with Thornside Road, that was was that ironstone we put on
ironstone.
That? And it came out looking really, really good. They've since
did we do that horizontal?
Yes, so it was horizontal corrugated iron, which is essentially what you'd normally put on the roof. We also
re-roofed the house. Yeah,
we put Manor Red on the roof and ironstone, which was an interesting combination, but it worked.
Yeah.
And the house from the street, it looks modern. It's taken its... I think that was an early 80s home as well. And it's taken a new lease on life. It looks good. The bottom of the house had been, like, giving a real quick story background to that, the bottom of the house had been filled in by a DIYer, not even an owner builder. It was a DIY, and it was just horrendous. So the blowout on that job, because sometimes you'll get a blowout, and that one there was the fact we had to pack the walls out, and nothing was straight. So all the lower levels, we had to pack them out to match up above. And so we probably went over a bit on that. But because we did the roofing and the wall cladding, it balanced out. So if we were to price that one again, it would probably be around the 20, not the 18. And that was, 2 years ago. Yeah. So if we look at inflation now, it's probably at about 22. And if you look at over 130 square metres, we're looking at $160-ish a square metre, what it would be, compared to $250, $300, $350 of a standing seam. So essentially that house done in standing seam would be closer to the $350 than the $300.
Yeah.
per square meter. So to put things into perspective, you're able to update your house with corrugated iron and get a nice Colorbond finish because without going away from the price point, but talking about price point is a lot of people come to us saying we don't want to paint our house anymore. We want standing seam cladding. It's beautiful. That's what we want. It's like, well, the reality is you don't want to paint your house anymore. If you've got the budget, do it. Do the standing seam. That's going to look amazing. If you don't have the budget, you can still achieve a Colorbond finish, a nice finish, with corrugated or iron or trim deck, or even speed deck or clip lock. These are the more generic ones for a much cheaper price, so that you can achieve that. I don't want to have to paint my house again. Yeah, right, because you'll get 30 years out of not having to paint Colorbond.
Yeah, it's just it's easy to clean too.
Yeah, it's great.
Just get the hose out, wash it down.
Yep,
done. So what's one of the things that we learned from that project?
Well, I mentioned the packing out of the sheets, packing out of the wall. That doing what I learned was going behind all the pipework, because we kept the pipework exposed. Now, a bit of background to that customer is they like Mario, right? And Mario has the green pipes and everything, and so they had some pipework on one side of the house and said, we can either pack the wall out and box over the top of it, or I can keep it exposed and you can keep it like a feature, kind of like Mario. And we had that conversation, and I said, maybe we paint them green and get a piranha plant to come out of them. But the amount of work that went into encapsulating those so that it could flash in to the corrugated iron was way more than I ever expected. And so what would I have learned there is probably it would have been better to either A, put the price up, or B, get a plumber to come in, disconnect them while we're there doing the work, and then reconnect them and run it externally over the top of the cladding. I think that would have been probably a better result, which would have potentially cost the customer probably around the same thing, because if we could just run our sheets over the top, it would have been a lot quicker. So that's essentially that. But the other thing is, the other thing I learned with that one was it was a square box house. We put corrugated iron on it, and we're still able to make it look, I don't know if I'd call it architectural, but modern and individual. Yeah.
And it's like you said, like even if they had wanted to go the standing seam, it may not have been the right profile to actually make that house look
100%. Yep, 100%. That house, they looked really good horizontally on that, because it had the brickwork at the front. The way that it was shaped had the extra awning over the back, so it had some things there that if you were to do that in a different cladding, it could have made it look fat and boxy, and this way it just elongated it, made it look bigger, and it just looked done. It looked right once we were done.
Yeah, peace flies. So next one we're going to sort of cover off is Ballada Street.
Right,
yeah. One of your favourite ones to have worked on, which was not a full, but a fairly large architectural reclad, which came in around like 55k.
Yeah, so that was one of my most enjoyable jobs. At times, I think I swore a little bit, and I had to apologise to the neighbours because it was frustrating, but it was enjoyably frustrating.
Well, you got to cut your teeth on a bit of design.
Well,
design aspects of the house as well. So
that's exactly right. So it was one of those jobs that you go, well, I want to do the job. So at the price point that we went in, it worked for everyone, essentially. So if it was one that was just going to be a nightmare without satisfactory, like self-satisfaction in doing, the price would have been another $10,000, $15,000. That's essentially where it would be. But because it was a job of passion, we worked out a place, and I did most of the work myself on it, and so I was able to bring some dollars back on it. However, 55, 60 grand would probably be around the point where it would be, and would be comfortable doing it if you were to do the exact same job again, right? So because it was nice and square, so these things, so because there's no big raking angles or anything on it, it helps to keep the price down. But this one had a lot of complexities. So bringing in the length of the job, so looking at the price point versus the length and how long it takes to do a job, if you said Ballada Street was $13,000 and we were there for 4 days.
Plucks Road was there.
Sorry, yeah, Plucks Road were there for 4 days. It was $13,000. Ballada Street we were there for 2 months and it was $55,000. So those figures don't really compute. So that takes. What did we learn? So what were the challenges on that particular project? When you've got a house which is on the side of a hill that you have to pack a lot of things out and you've got to cover a bunch of things, it adds a lot of complexity to it. It adds a lot more. Like say, Ballada Street had 15 deliveries, or approximately.
Significantly more than Plucks Road, which had 1. Yeah.
So if you look at a delivery cost of $100, there's $1,500 just in deliveries, opposed to $100 in deliveries. Those sorts of things add to the costing of it. Why does that cost so much? If you look at, there wasn't that many square meters on Ballada Street.
No.
So of square meterage cladding, the rate would be horrendous. There was a lot of sophites that we did. There was a lot of
the Pelican Ledge.
Yeah, the Pelican Ledge. And so there again, to do that job, the Pelican Ledge had to go on first. So we had to pack the Pelican Ledge. We had to put all the framing onto that. We had to sheet the Pelican Ledge with FC or ply. We put ply down. We had to sheet the Pelican Ledge with ply, and then we had to wrap it over the top with the Pelican Ledge, the Colorbond.
Yeah, the Colorbond skin over the top, so that it make sure it's not oil canned and.
Yeah. And then we put the battens on the wall, and then we put the sheeting on the wall, and
then we put the soffit on.
Then we put the soffit, and then the other barges, and it had box gutters in there that we had to retrofit because it had failing gutters. Now that was the reason they were there. So
that was the main reason why they called us in the first place, was their gutters were failing, and it's like, I can make this place look $1 million.
And if you're interested, I really highly recommend, and even if you're not interested, I still recommend watching the video, House of the Year 2022. But that one just had a lot of complexities. That essentially, that's the more complexities, the higher the cost. That's basically that. That just had a lot on that one. There was a lot of. If you could think of all the different challenges, that one kind of had them.
Ticked all the boxes.
Yeah.
So now we're gonna finish it all off with a new build, which was the house out at Boona.
Beautiful.
And that was a good project to have done, and we used. The bedrooms are all skinned in the Highland tray, and then the living area had red core weathering steel.
Yeah. So we put the roof on both of
as
them.
Well.
So that's, we're not going to talk about the pricing of that. They had a clip lock roof on one and
the Highland tray
on the other because it was highly visible. So that was $320. That one. That was
Highland tray.
320
Highland tray, and the wall cladding came in at about 31,000.
Yeah, for the Highland tray.
For the Highland tray, and then 21,000 for the red core.
Yeah. So I'll put a few photos up here so you can see what we're talking about. Now let's just touch base on the Highland tray first, and then we'll go to the red core. So that was pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
The hardest part about that was the access. I'll give you
also on the side of it.
Yeah, right.
Side of a hill.
There's something about that. It rained so much while we were working on that. Now this is,
and it was, it's right on the top of a hill.
Yeah.
So it's just high winds.
Well, yeah, that was actually a didn't you say it was cyclone rated?
It's rated as N5.
Yeah, N5. So essentially,
which is technically exactly the same as C2,
which is cyclone.
Right. So
but the fun part of that I remember the day that the Highland tray turned up for the job for the wall cladding. And the Stratco truck couldn't actually deliver it up the driveway. So, and I was getting frustrated because I couldn't get my workouts in, and I was training for the Hell of the West, which again, I'm training for the Hell of the West now. And so I decided, I had my trail shoes on, and I decided that I'd run every sheet from the road 250 meters up to the house and run back and get it up a hill. And I brought it in. So if you're looking at challenges, that one was an awesome little. This is a story, little story about that job. Anyway, I can't charge out for that.
No.
It was a 2.5 hour workout. I think I ended up running 15k or some crazy amount over to get the sheets up. But so doing that one there, it was pretty straightforward. The challenges on that one were that From a pricing point, you price that as you would price
not a normal
any job, because the sheeting does comply when installed as wall cladding. There's no variance, I think, for cyclone rating.
No, not with Highland Tray. No, because
it was only for roofing.
It's just the roofing that kind of, there's a few little sort of extra things that sort of go into it, but it's still fixed at 450 centers and still fixed.
Yeah. So on the walls, it was priced as a normal job, other than a bit of travel because it was all the way out of Boona. And it went on kind of like it was a normal job. We had some issues with that one. We had a contractor come in that had moved up from Melbourne, and he was a plumber who specialised in cladding. And we've had to fix leaks that were caused from his installation on the house. And I think that's mainly to do with the way that we do it against the way that he did it, and as well as the type of windows. The windows, because it was C5, whatever the N5. Because it was N5 rated, the owner had to put in specific windows. And so the windows that went in were ones that would go into a high-rise building. So they didn't have the damp course around them for waterproofing. It didn't have a lot of the normal systems that would be...
Yeah, for a normal sort of house.
Yeah, so that was one of the challenges that go into it. Now, we back ourselves to know that when we quote a job, it doesn't matter what the windows are, we'll make it work. So on this one, we learnt that if there's no damp course around the windows, we need to install damp course around the windows and do that as a retrofitting method. Because it's very important. Because if for some reason the flashings fail when you've got 100k an hour winds with a thunderstorm, it just goes under the sucking and runs down. So that was one of the challenges. We had to pull a bit of the wall off and re-flash a whole section of window on that, which we did, and it's been done and it's not leaking anymore. So, but that was pretty straightforward. Other than the windows, we learnt something from the window. And so the price point you did that at was pretty on point. Yeah.
And then it comes to the fun part. Doing the red core.
Yeah, so the red core is... What is red core, Josh?
Red core is 3 mil weathering steel.
Yeah. Well, that one was 3
mil. Well, that one was 3 mil. Comes in like a 1200 by 2400 or 3 meter or...
3.6.
Yeah, meter sheets. And they're basically just a big giant plate. And so we had to get them laser cut to suit the different sections of the parapet, and then there's like a little outdoor barbecue sort of window.
Yeah. The bunker. It looked like a bunker.
Yeah, or pillbox or something. And going through to quote it, I had to go, okay, so it's going to be this size by this long. How many pieces at this wide am I going to get to fit here? Okay, how many pieces of that can I get out of a sheet size? Just so we can minimize waste, because it's they're very expensive sheets to get in the first place, and then get laser cut to suit. And you want to try and minimize as much wastage as possible. Yeah.
So you work that out, and in the end, the price point for that, what was that price point?
21k.
So about 21. 21. Is that all it was?
Yeah.
Okay, so 21k to do that, because you drive up that road and you see that road, you see that house from the road and you go, wow. And the standing seam does that, because if you'd done anything else, it would have been like, okay, that's nice, but sorry, not the standing seam. The red core, because it's all rusty and just looks...
Yeah, when you get it, it's all like black.
Yeah,
it just looks grey and black, but once it all patinas up and gets that rust over the top, it looks just...
Yeah, and if you don't know what we're talking about, if you've gone over the Gateway Bridge, they've got Sir William Schlayer or whatever it's called now.
It's called.
Those bridges, they've done when they built the second bridge, they put a big like arty sort of thing in the middle. That's all made out of red core or core 10, I think. So in installing that, so Josh allowed for the material, and your price point, we worked out that we'd never done it before. This is the first job we'd done it. And so the price point worked out, and like, well, our normal labour rate would be X for something that would go on there. So we had to put some margin on top of that to make sure that we covered ourselves, because we hadn't done it before. So we had to make sure that we didn't go backwards. So we did. And from a measure out point of view, that there's a lot of work that needed to go in with the builder to make sure that their framework landed very, very evenly because each sheet needed to land on a stud so we could screw them in. They all had to have fixing points because of the weight of them and the fact that they needed to. So each individual sheet was measured individually on every wall between the studs. And so when we were laying that, you might have one sheet that was 595, another one that was 598, and another one that was 605, and so we had to lay them out, set them all out on the scaffold to be able to put them on. So without going on more and more about the job, the price point worked out quite well, and there wasn't that many square meters of it, from memory. Though, when you're going to a really high-end finish, like that, you don't get much more high-end than that unless you're going a copper.
Yeah,
you're up there with the copper standing seam that's all hammer finished, which will have all real dimples and it'll all be like rough finished, kind of like an old church in France or something. A French church. That's a bit an old. It's very Australian, isn't it?
An old cathedral.
Yes. So yeah, that essentially. I don't know if I'm waffling on now. The difference in going to something like that is, if we talk about the price point for standing seam cladding being a bespoke price depending on the house and depending on the different components or the different challenges.
Yeah.
When it goes to something like Redcore or your next level, that jumps up again. So it really comes into, there's a lot of work that goes into the quoting stage.
And the fact that it also has to be all sealed off and weatherproofed with FC beforehand is more of a facade sort of covering, because it's
a facade only.
Yeah, you're going to end up with, otherwise you're going to end up with dissimilar metals, and it's not going to seal properly.
Well, so essentially it's a facade. So we've done the Redcore again on a house on Chermside Street in New Farm. And we did that there with the 2.5 mil material, and they were bigger sheets. It was a lot harder. However, again, the walls all had to be 100% sealed under our sheets. So when we're installing those sheets, we didn't really need to worry too much about the waterproofing component of it. We just needed them to look really, really pretty.
Yeah, that's it.
So,
that's it.
So there's a big variance through those 5 projects where you've got Plucks Road, which was almost treated like a new build, but easier than a new build. Yeah, like it's a facelift.
Yeah, well, yeah, it's a facelift, but because it was just so simple and just the access was easy. It's nice and square. There's not a lot of penetrations. There's not a lot of extra stuff that had to go into it. It can bring the price point way down. Like, if there had been more, if there had been more windows in there, the price would have gone up a little bit, not a hell of a lot, because it was a very simple job. Once you start adding in like heaps of penetrations, having to install off of multiple scaffolds, moving scaffolds all the time,
multiple orders.
Yeah.
So another reason that I didn't touch on before is if you're when you're laying out, so let's use Ballada Street for example, and you're laying a bunch of walls, you have to, and you're going to start, because you've got a corner which comes to another corner, and we're using the method of a folded sheet to go around the corner. Well, you're either going to, if you start with a corner and run either way, you're then going to have to order another corner at the end of one of those and a transition at the end of those before you can do the next 2 walls. So the complexity of that is that you can't do as much work in a day, because you have to get to a point, then you've got to order more material and then go to a point, rather than going, let's get all the sheeting on, now let's go through and order all the flashings to finish, let's finish the flashings. Yeah. It's multiple facets since the 15 at Ballada Street. Yes.
And that's where we've learned to pre-flash whatever we can pre-flash.
Yeah.
To save on delivering, which is a lot, very easy to do with head flashings and toe flashings. Corners not so much, but
that's one thing we've learned though with that, is that if we can start with a corner, we can get 2 faces done.
Yeah.
And then we get and then you can get 2 corners again, or 2 internals, or 2 whatever it may be, and continue from that. So, yeah, I like to start from a corner if I can, because generally they become a feature.
Yes,
and
very
you
much
need to
so.
set out windows. So every job's different, though. Again, every single job.
Everything's bespoke. Like, and that's the main thing I tell everyone when they call up. It's like, you can't give a square meter. It's going to fall somewhere between this and this. It may even be more than the high end. It all depends on what is actually happening on the project itself.
Yeah. So from a cost point of view, looking at cladding and talking about costing, how much does it cost to clad my house, or reclad my house? Essentially, you've got to come to a conclusion somewhere.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're going to be paying to start. It's going to start somewhere at 160 a square
For the cheapest.
And that's to go with corrugated iron, and then the only way is up from there. Yeah.
So, and I guess that's something, if depending on what people's budget is, right? If you've got, it doesn't matter, you're going to do it. So a customer that we're going to be interviewing in the future who had a really poor result on their house, going with their builder installed the cladding themselves, well underpriced it, and it was horrendous.
Finished poorly, and it's a massive drama.
Yeah. So,
and it was one of the things that they'd put on there.
That's what I was getting at.
Non-negotiable. We want this.
So as a feature of our house. If it was going to cost them $30,000, they would have saved that $30,000 to have that on their house. It was a non-negotiable. And so if you're a non-negotiable, well, it's like, the end result, it's really important to do that. So you need to know what that price is going to be. So, what can people do if they wanted to get a price? So you want to know how much it costs. People want to know what it costs. We're happy to quote you on it. Yeah. Just send through. What do they need when they send through a quote?
They need to.
What would do it the easiest?
The easiest way to do it is if you can get yourself a copy of the plans.
Yeah.
Whether if you've got an old home or you're building a home.
And you get them from.
So if you've got an older home, you should, depending on how old the home is, you should be able to get it from City Council.
Yep. So if you're in a city which isn't Brisbane and you're in an area which we don't service, then we actually offer a estimate pricing. So if you're wanting to get an estimate of how much your house would cost to do your house in standing seam or corrugated iron in a MyCladders type finish, in a high-end architectural finish, we do offer that as a service, and it's price on application. And that will be somewhere between $200 and $500 depending on the job and how much time needs to be put into that. So if it's something that interests you, we're happy to give you
well, it'll help you with your budget, like to put a budget estimate together for your home.
Yeah, so that's something that Josh actually, as a not side gig, but Josh as a his own personal business does takeoffs. So that's what he's really good at, and that's one of the main reasons that Josh came over here, other than the fact that the bloke's a good guy.
Thanks, mate.
So that's something that we can work together on as a business, as experts in what we do. We can provide that for you as a service, and on top of that, we don't currently, but in the future we're aiming to be able to give you flashing designs that you can utilize, which is actually in our price point, that you can have your builder utilize to make sure that you have it installed properly.
Yeah, so hopefully with those examples we've been able to explain a little bit about the cost involved with architectural cladding, and so next time you won't be so surprised when it comes through.
And it's $450 a square meter.
Yeah, that's it. Because we're constantly learning, discovering better ways to do these installations, and trying to keep them oil can free, ensuring that they're waterproof, and taking the time to make sure they look amazing. And that's actually the reason that Kenny, weren't you recently approached by someone about all this?
Right. Yeah. So during the week, I was given a phone call. I received a phone call from TAFE Queensland, asking me if I can assist them in training up the teachers to teach the apprentices because they've had a lot of changes to the Roof Plumbing Certificate 3, the core subjects and the things that go into that. For example, cladding's now becoming a major part, as well as insulation. And they've engaged. They want to engage me to let them know how to do it properly and teach them how to train it the proper way to the new apprentices.
Yeah, well, that's pretty good.
I was stoked,
yeah, pretty stoked to get that phone call. I mean, it shows that this is another reason why we started doing the podcast, is to try and help get the information that we learn and we've learned from being in the industry out to everyone else. And if we can pass that on to future generations, then that means that the industry is going to get better and better.
Yeah. Yeah, we want to get rid of the cowboys, minimise the cowboys.
Yeah, these horror stories that we have been getting recently are going to become less and less.
Yeah, that's right. So, what did you learn this week, Josh? I got to ask a question.
Ask a question to me.
We've tried really hard because Josh is the host of this podcast.
Yeah, what did I learn?
Hasn't he done a good job? Yeah. I reckon he's done a great job.
What did I learn this week? I learned how to write a script for one of these things properly.
Oh, and what do you reckon? I reckon he's done well. Chuck a thing in the comment.
Yeah, we're doing all right. That's what I've learned this week. How to properly research and do better at making these not sound as.
And I reckon your volume's good too. I reckon they'll be able to
learn to actually press record on the machine properly, and fix the gain on this so that it actually doesn't sound like I'm talking into a microphone like this.
No, I can still hear you there. Before I think you'd go over here and then you come. I'm having a land. So and what I learnt this week, I guess, is that you're going to go through days which are terrible, and you're going to have days which are really good. And on the days where you're not feeling great, your cup is filling up. Like, you got your cup and it's filling up. You're near the top and you don't know how to get it down. And you just go, well, what do I need to do to solve this, and just move on from it. And then just action things. Go, well, what I'm doing right now is not imperative. Let's go and deal with what it is that I need to deal with. And once I finish dealing with that, I'll feel much better. We all have bad days, and knowing that while you're in that moment of a bad day, knowing that tomorrow's probably going to be better, and making decisions toward better outcomes. So, and with all of that, looking forward to Fridays where we get to spend our time designing, marketing, podcasting,
all this fun stuff.
Yeah. So that's
so
it.
We'll see you next time, folks.
Now, 2023, I just want to pull this up before we go. 2023, we're going to have a whole heap of podcasts. We've made a goal of 40 podcasts this year.
Which is a pretty good effort considering how long did it take us to do the last 10?
All up 3 years.
3 years of talking about it and then finally getting off the bum and doing it.
Yeah, so we've got new shirts.
Yeah, new shirts.
Did you mention the new shirts?
Yeah, I did mention the new shirts right at the start.
And we've got some fresh caps. So we still have 2 boxes of caps, and if you comment and you would come up, now we do have one to be sent out, and that cap is going out to Ben from CJH Constructions. Now Ben forwarded the question: can we get some tips for us builders on how we can install the roofing better? Because sometimes sometimes the builders want to use roofers, however they can't always get them, and they need to put a lid on that roof.
Yeah, well, that's one of those things at the moment with lack of trades in Australia, that sometimes the builders are going to have to get the carpenters to do it themselves. Exactly.
So his question was, can we get some tips on things that we need to do to make sure that we lay the roof properly? Because they're allowed to. This is interesting. They're allowed to lay the roof properly by license, but it doesn't mean they're doing it to code. So that's our next podcast, isn't it?
Yeah, well, we're covering that off for him next time.
Yeah, there you go.
So too easy, folks. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thanks for spending your time with us.
Looking to take your construction business to the next level? At Primal Agency, you're partnering with experts that know your business, and that's half the battle. As Australia's most trusted construction marketing team, these guys are all about evolving your business. If you're looking to scale, talk to the crew at Primal today, or check out primalagency.com.au. Now, let's go construct some art.
That sounds like a plan.
That was good. I like